Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Home Tech Podcast. Jason Griffin here. So happy to have you with us. I am joined, as always, by my partner, Seth Johnson. Seth, how's it going?
Good, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Seth. I am excited for this episode. We had Raphael Oberholzer on from NEEO, and that's a tough name to pronounce, but a fun guest to have on the show. Raph has been on before, actually going way back to episode 55. Believe it or not, we're sitting here on episode 186. So it has been it's been a while, and Raph is, of course, behind the company NEEO, the NEEO remote, which has recently started shipping, and we thought we'd reach back out and get him on to update us on all the latest happenings over there at NEEO, and really had a great time talking to him. You can just hear the passion in his voice. He seems to be super excited, by no surprise, to have finally reached this phase in the product life cycle and to be getting it out there into the hands of people. And it was really a good time to bring him on and catch up.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard that show, because that was a long time ago, we were just talking about this, that I would go check that out before you listen to the interview tonight. Go listen to the whole show, because it's an interesting point in time. 3 years ago, when all this started, what was going on in Kickstarter, what was going on in the industry itself was just crazy. That was, I remember there was a hub that was announced every week, and I eventually got a hub bell, and we started ringing that later in the year. But like, it was a wild time. Jason, I remember lining up guests, and their companies would disappear before the end of the week. I mean, that actually happened once. So it was just a crazy time to be doing this, and then to have a Kickstarter on top of this, especially after 3 years and many Kickstarters just kind of disappearing and without ever producing a product. Here we are now with an actual, you and I both, with the NEEO remote sitting in our hand. Crazy to think about. Yeah,
they were kind enough to send us both units to kick the tires on a little bit, and so far I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a great product. I love the hardware. Has a great feel in the hand. Setup was very easy. I did take some time to actually post a review on the website if anyone is listening and is interested in seeing a little bit more about our thoughts. Took a bunch of pictures, unboxing. Seth, you put together a quick unboxing video as sort of a bonus to that post, so people can go check that out. The packaging, wow. I mean, they spared no expense. It really, if you're into that sort of thing, which I am, I pay attention to stuff like that. The unboxing experience of the NEEO is very, very high quality, as is the remote in general, as far as the build out. And so far, from a software perspective, I don't have any major complaints at all. I itemized a few little quirks in the blog post I put up, mostly with the implementation of some of the DirecTV codes I'm using and how those are sort of laid out. But these are very minor sort of housekeeping things. Generally, my experience with the remote has been very positive, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, same here. Like you said, the unboxing was very interesting. I kind of had some headwind on that, and saw that some other people were talking about how well the box. I think you sent me a text or something that was like the box is insane. So I was kind of ready for that when mine rolled in. And I, like you said, I made that little video. The unboxing was good. Setting up, I think, was even better, because after I had everything plugged in and ready to go, I just started programming with the, I guess there's an iPhone app or an Android app that you can download and set everything up with. Pushing buttons, mashing through, searching for the TV model that I have. I have a TV on my desk with an Apple TV. That's what I kind of use here in my quote unquote office / garage, to kind of keep me company during the day if I want to turn something on. And it took about, I think it was under 10 minutes. I want to say it was probably like 7 minutes from start to finish, like from the thing powering on to me actually having an operating system, turning it on and turning it off, and it working. It was 7 minutes worth of setup time, which I thought was pretty good. I imagine yours was a little bit longer because you have like a DirecTV, an AV receiver, a couple of sources. How did that go for you?
It went really quick. Yeah, it was a very easy thing to figure out. I think for somebody, look, I think they've made it about as easy as you possibly can. I think it's still not something. In fact, I shouldn't say I think. I know it's still not something that my wife, for instance, would be able to figure out, right? And so, but for anybody who, I would say, if you've got enough knowledge of AV to like hook up an AV receiver, then you're going to have enough knowledge to program this remote for that sort of a setup. Like it is not difficult to do. It just takes a little bit of tinkering and figuring out. I did have to do a little bit of adjustment in what they call the recipes, which are like their version of macros. So power on, power off, things like that. So for the power on one, for instance, I did have to play around a little bit with the like pause lengths between the power on and when the TV will take an input switch. I've got an older TV, and so that can be fairly slow, and some of that stuff I had to tinker with a little bit. But overall, really, the setup process I thought was great, and overall, again, very high quality remote. You can just tell the build quality is there, and I'm excited. It took them a long time to ship, and we talked about that a little bit on the interview here with Raph, so definitely stay tuned for that. I followed along on their blog throughout that whole process, and what I can say in their defense is that any of those delays or whatever you might want to call them seem to be very much a result of a commitment to quality through that manufacturing process, and so far my impression is that shows. So my hat's off to them.
Yeah, I would agree. The remote feels good. Like it's got a nice weight to it, I suppose. I don't know if I'm going to bring it inside because I don't want it to get dropped by the little one there that likes to go after remotes. So I think it's going to stay out here and look really nice on my desk. But I don't think this. I don't know if it's going to make it inside. The Control 4 remotes have taken spills a couple of times, and they've got a couple of cracks on them. So I may just leave those in there for now. But this one looks pretty good. It's got the machined aluminum case body, I guess, that wraps around it, and a couple of buttons on it that aren't very hard to reach and press and play and all that kind of stuff. Like it's I think it's a two-handed operation if you try and get up to the screen. Like it's hard to for me, it's kind of hard to walk up the remote and press the screen at the top with my thumb. But most everything that you do, I think, could be done with the D-pad these days, right? Like, unless you're one of those people that insists on having the ability to like push in the buttons to change the channel. I don't think you're going to be missing much with the couple of buttons that they have here on the D-pad. So, like I said, like your overall, this is a pretty good remote. I'd say overall a really good start on a remote. And an entire, as we'll talk later with Raph, like it's an entire ecosystem that they're setting up. It's not just the remote. So that there's a lot more that you can expect to see from these guys in the future.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds like they've definitely got some big plans, and we will not belabor it anymore right now. Definitely stay tuned for that interview. We're going to touch on a couple of news stories very quickly before we get into that. Go ahead.
Check out your awesome review. Jason, you got to do this. It's self-serving, but you have to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know I'm probably like the worst person on the planet when it comes to self-promotion. So I appreciate that, Seth. Yes, definitely head over to HomeTech.fm and just click on the blog, or go to HomeTech.fm/blog, and you'll see the review right there at the top. And, got a lot of pictures of the remote, the unboxing, the app, screenshots from the app and the setup process. So if you're curious to see what that looks like, I think it's all there. So go take a look at that and let us know what you think. Like I said, we are going to touch on a few news stories here before we get into the interview. Before we do the news, we want to quickly extend a big thanks out to our patrons of the show. If you're not familiar with what it means to become a patron, head on over to HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, that's HomeTech.fm/support. And that's a way that if you are a fan of what we do here, you find entertainment or education out of the podcast and want to support us, it's a way that you can do that for as little as $1 a month through our Patreon page. So one last time, that's HomeTech.fm/support.
Yep, and I'd like to echo I'd like to echo that thanks and actually give a shout out to someone we had come out on the $5 level, Joe Albane. I guess I hope that's how you pronounce your name, Joe. Joe, I've got that 100%. So the last name not too sure on, but thank you very much. We really do appreciate your $5 and up level pledge there. That really does go a long way to helping us keep the show going and keep motivated to do this every single week. I mean, we really, really try to make this happen. So tonight we're recording on a Tuesday night rather than a Wednesday night, and Jason and I sit down, we chat about home technology and record it, edit, send it out. All the patronage does go a long way, so we really do appreciate it. Thank you, Joe, and thank you to all the other patrons.
Yep, absolutely. Seth, picture of the week, as you typically do. You've done a great job this week. This is a fun one, actually. A GIF on Twitter here, and pretty funny. I feel like I might have seen maybe a different iteration of this floating around somewhere, but it is a virtual shark tank. So it's like an LCD wall or something like that, and looks like a big great white shark swimming around in there, and there's a guy kind of standing there tapping on the glass, and then the shark swims by, and you wait a few seconds later, and he comes just darting up at this virtual Shark Tank glass and smashes into it, and the glass cracks, and the guy literally, falls on his back, scared of this thing. It's pretty funny. You definitely got to go check this out. This guy, I'm watching it right now, and he got a good scare. That might have taken a year or two off his life right there.
Yeah, this one is a little older. I saw it last week, but I had it and a couple of other options in our show notes, and your laugh and continual laughing at it. I guess we just had to do it this week. So if you've seen this one, sorry, but I think it's definitely worth sharing, because this one, this is hilarious. Like if I was doing a virtual Shark Tank, this is definitely something I would insist the artist kind of put into it, because man, the reaction is great. But also I can imagine, like, if there was kids and stuff, instead of this guy doing this, like I'm sure the reaction from kids would be hysterical as well. I'm sure
they've gotten some good ones. So
Yep.
Head on over to HomeTech.fm/186, HomeTech.fm/186 if you want to take a look at that. We're going to touch on 3 quick news stories here before we get into our interview with Raphael from NEEO. First one, judge halts the Ring Protect smart home security system in a lawsuit with ADT. We have talked about this lawsuit before, so the lawsuit itself is not new news. This has been an ongoing and developing story, but I think the big one here is that the judge has told Ring that they have to halt sales while they're figuring this out, and that is definitely bad news for Ring. I'm sure with the holiday season coming up, I'm sure they're working feverishly to see if they can get this cleared up before then. Unfortunate for them, and some of the details behind this, I'm not totally sure who's in the right or who's in the wrong, but all the same, it does seem like a bum deal for Ring, and I would even go so far as to say for consumers in general. I am excited about this product and the price point, and particularly with that $10 a month monitoring that we've talked about numerous times. I think it's a really attractive offering, and so we'll have to keep a close eye on this and see how it develops.
Right. Yeah. I think it's even less than $10 a month, isn't it? I thought it was $100 a year or something like that. So
yeah, I think if you do an annual option, I think you're right. I do think you get a little bit of a price break, but I think monthly it was $10, but $100 if you did a whole year or something like that.
But I'm bummed that this isn't shipping. I can completely understand why. According to the lawsuit that's going on, there's a lot of maybe shady things going back and forth. I don't know. To me, it depends on what your perspective is. If you're Ring and you feel like you've paid Zonoff for some technology that you own, like they got that technology and they went and made a security system. And if you're ADT, who purchased Zonoff and didn't really realize that they were handing off technology to a competitor who is definitely trying to disrupt their market, I can understand their positioning too. So I think this is definitely going to get technical there in the courts, and I'm very interested to see what the result of all this mess is going to be. Hopefully we'll get to see Ring deliver a product here one of these days. And but I can imagine that could go south, if the judge rules in ADT's favor, right? Like that technology, the entire product line may have to be given back, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure where this is going to, which direction this is going to go, but ADT did purchase Zonoff, and then that, Zonoff shut down, ADT invested, right? $36 million into the company to help develop a DIY system. Zonoff shut down. Ring CEO Jamie Siminoff says he paid Zonoff $1.2 million around January to help develop some of this technology as well. So you had a couple of different companies sort of investing money into this platform, and
then Ring hired everybody at Zonoff.
After they shut down, that's right.
Yeah, they were all gone. So
and my favorite part of the story, Seth, from CE Pro here. The lawsuit describes a, quote, clandestine meeting between in the Zonoff parking lot between CEO Mike Harris and Ring representatives, where Harris reportedly handed over a USB stick containing the Z1 technology. And it just sounds like something out of a B-rate movie.
It's spy thriller here. It's always those USB sticks, right? That's what we saw with the Snowden video, with the USB sticks were in the Rubik's Cube or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. It's always the USB sticks.
So we'll have to see. Ring is claiming that ADT is really just doing this to keep them out of the market during the holiday season, and sort of an anti-competitive measure. And who knows? A lot of layers to it. We'll keep a close eye on it and see how it develops. But it does look at the moment, at least, like that Ring security system. If that was on your holiday list, you may want to start looking for some other options, of which there are no shortage. There's been a lot of movement in that DIY home security market, thankfully. So you do have some other options.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, well, let's look at the next story here that was kind of big this week. Control4 had a pretty good quarter, but I think the bigger news, well, I guess if you're a business person, like they actually had a huge quarter, and their revenue is their stock price is like gone up crazy amount. Like I saw it was at $35 today. A couple of years back, it was less than $6. So like 2 years ago, it was less than $6. So they have really turned that company around, made some really good strategic investments, and looks like they're planning on just pushing forward. But I think the biggest story in here is for Control4 dealers. They're going to start, cutting off dealers who are just inactive or not interested in the brand, or maybe not focusing all of their business on Control4. Maybe dealers who have stopped selling Control4 in favor for another product line. They're going to start cutting them off and handing that business that they were giving these guys over to other dealers who are more, let's say, enthusiastic about the brand.
Yeah, their stock price has tripled in 52 weeks, the story says. Their revenue, we're not going to get into all the numbers, but very healthy growth, continual healthy growth. Martin Pleen, the CEO, I think is doing a great job. I've had the privilege of meeting him a couple times. Really seems like a very, very sharp guy, and has a very, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, a very strong vision and sense of direction for the company. And whether or not you agree with him, he's definitely stuck to that, and it does seem to be working for now, at least. And like you said, part of this story is they just feel like they've maybe got some riffraff in the dealer base, and people who are just keeping the line on to have the option and aren't really going out there and aggressively selling it. And so they think that it would be better to clear them out and make some room for new, more hungry dealers and get them in and see what they can do. And so, like I said, that seems to be indicative of their, they've got a vision and a direction for the company, and they're going to keep trying to grow that dealer base and get dealers in there who are excited about the product and want to go out there and sell it. And we'll see if it continues to work for them.
The quote here, I think, is very interesting. We intend to more assertively review our 5,000 plus dealers with regard to their ability to successfully market, sell, install, and support, hey there, ding ding, our solutions. The ding ding was actually my add-in. It wasn't part of his quote, but
oh, really? Yeah, interesting. I thought he said that.
Nope, that was all me. But it was for you, Jason. So I think this is big. I think that there will be 5,000 dealers. That's got to be worldwide, not just here in the U.S. But
I would think so.
I imagine that list is going to get whittled down to what they consider the cream of the crop, and maybe they'll whittle it down by 1,000 dealers and just cut off the people who are just kind of hanging on to the brand just to say that they are a Control4 dealer. And then, I've seen this happen before. Guys who say they're a dealer of brand X and then push you into brand Y just to get the business. So
right.
Seen that happen plenty of times in the business over the years I was selling. So good for Control4, and hopefully they'll keep moving on up. This is they're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So can't complain about that.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention here, it does, the story does say that they're looking like in the single percentages probably of the dealers they're gonna cut. So we're not talking about them going out and sort of slashing and burning the dealer base. I thought I would mention that just in case that didn't come
too
across.
Bad.
So just a little bit of trimming going on, not a raised scorched earth policy there on the dealer base. So we'll see how it works out. Last story here, Seth. I think I'm going to let you sort of tee this one up. You found it, and it sounds like an interesting product, the Amplify Teleport.
Right. So Ubiquity Labs, we've covered them a number of times. We actually had someone on who talked about the Amplify, and this is their consumer-based router / Wi-Fi device. I actually have one at the house here. It works relatively well. The only complaint I have, and I think I had this question on the podcast, like when we were talking about this, was that the Wi-Fi extenders, the little paddles that plug into the wall, they have non-standard power supplies, and of course, at least 2 of them have gone bad since they've owned this device. So not too happy about that. But at any given time, I have the Wi-Fi router and 1 paddle running in my house, and that's more than enough to cover my house. So I've never really complained too much. But it would be better if they figured out how to do more standard power supplies, so you could replace it with a 12-volt power supply. They are coming out with a device called the Amplify Teleport, which is a companion device to the Amplify router. This little device is pretty cool, and it's a security product, so I like it. The teleport will actually extend your Wi-Fi or your home network wherever you are in the world. So what this is actually doing behind the scenes is setting up a VPN, a secure connection between the teleport device and the Amplify router at home. And when you go out to an Airbnb or you go to a hotel room in Europe somewhere, you want to make sure that your internet is secure. You plug the little teleport in. It creates your home network inside the Airbnb where you're staying, and you get secure internet back to your house, and then your internet goes out from there. Another couple of things this could do is, if you are in Europe and you want to watch some Netflix, which if you look at their Kickstarter page here, you'll see.
I was just looking at that.
You'll see a TV
really
that
funny.
says movies, but movies is colored and shaped exactly like the Netflix logo.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. Well, if you're somewhere else in the world, you'll be able to get back. And the way, Netflix doesn't have agreements in some countries, so they're just not available. If you had this device, you could actually get in and watch the movies that are on Netflix in that country. So, or back home. You'll also be able to access your home devices. So if you had, recordings at home, those recordings would be available to you over this VPN, just like you're sitting in your house. So it's a very powerful technology. It looks like they're selling these in kits, which I don't really understand. They're calling it an early bird. $199 for a Amplify kit, which includes the HD router and teleport. And then they kind of go up from there with different types of kits. I'm really curious as to what the teleport itself would sell for, because I would use that. Like if I needed to travel, I would grab a little teleport, that was connected to my house. And, whenever we stopped somewhere else, whether it be here in the States or overseas, I'd plug that into the wall and have my house network wherever we were. So I'm really curious as to what the product will be. Maybe it's $100, maybe 150. I don't know. I think they're going to do well with this because it looks like a really neat product. And if what the videos and setup images that they have, if it looks anything like that, I think that they're going to have a home run with this when it comes to setting up secure VPNs in different locations. Because this is kind of like a no-brainer, easy way to do it, and it's secure. Like you don't have to worry about it. You can do all this crazy stuff and set up your own VPN on your own router and everything. But the question always is like, did I do that right? I don't know. Maybe it's right. I get somewhere else. It doesn't work. Why is it not working? If this works like they're saying, and it sets up like they're saying it sets up, I think they're going to have a home run here.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. Not a lot I can add. I think it looks like a cool product. I agree with you. I was skimming through the page as you said that, thinking, no, that can't be right. They got to be selling that thing individually, but it looks like for now, at least, you've got to buy it on their Kickstarter page. Anyways, all of the pledges are tied to kits that include that Amplify HD router. So if you've already got one of the routers like you do, which I believe is what you're saying, there doesn't appear at the moment, at least, to be an option where you could, for instance, support the Kickstarter at a level that would allow you just to get the teleport device, which is interesting. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I'm sure if this thing makes it to market and sees the light of day, surely they'll be selling those individually, I would think.
I think this is another problem I have with these recent Kickstarter things. This seems to be.
I know where you're going.
This is just pre-orders. Like they're just trying to get your money before they launch this thing in December. Like it's coming out. They aren't. Ubiquity's doing this. There's a couple of other companies that have done this recently. I think we talked about them in the past. But this is pre-order. So if you want to just wait around, this product will be out next year, probably, where you can just buy it standalone, or maybe I would suggest waiting, because I don't really care for the pre-order that they're doing here. This is a huge company. They're not in need for any money to actually make this happen. And if you look at their goals, like what they're doing on their timeline that they have to post on here, it's like it's going to ship no matter what. Starting mass production in November, shipping to backers in December, which means it'll be for sale sometime next year. If you have a trip planned for next year, maybe it's a pretty good idea to kind of put this on your radar, and we may look back to it after it's out and see how it works.
Yeah. Well, with all of the security, network security and cybersecurity stories in the news, great time to be shipping a product like this, and so we'll see how it does. But I think Seth, without any further ado here, let's tee up our interview. Once again, we had Raphael from NEEO on, and the NEEO remote. We were super excited to get him back on, get a chance to chat with him, and after a number of years, and see what it's like to finally be on the other end of that spectrum and shipping the remote. And I had a really great time, and we hope you enjoy the conversation as well. So let's get started. Hey, Raphael, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Great to be back. It's exciting times.
Yeah, we are really happy to have you here. It's been quite a while since we had you on. I had to go back and look, episode 55, and this will be episode 186, I believe. So it's been quite a while, but we're excited. Obviously, you've got big news now. The NEEO remote is shipping and getting out there into people's hands, and Seth and I count ourselves amongst those who have one, and definitely so far I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a great remote, and so we really appreciate you taking some time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule right now to come back on and join us. Before we get into talking about the remote, why don't we start with a little bit of background and introduction, just in case there is anybody listening who didn't hear our previous episode or is not aware of you and the NEEO remote. So first, Raphael, let's start with you and give a quick personal introduction and talk a little bit about your industry background as well.
Yeah, I'm a CDR guy. I used to lead a company that was doing large custom installations, mainly in Europe. And then I felt the time is right to start doing similar things that we did for our billionaires and millionaires customers for everyone. And then we started our startup NEEO 3 years ago.
Yep, that's right. And that was about the time we had you on originally. I think at the time, I don't know if it still is, but you guys had, I think, one of the most successful, if not the most successful Kickstarter campaigns in history. Tell us a little bit about that, for anybody who may not be familiar.
Yeah, that we worked on the product for about a year, and that was completely in stealth mode. And then we just wanted to go out to the real world and see if we can tell the stories that the rest of the world understands it and wants to buy into it, and see how people love the product. And so the idea was to do this crowdfunding to get more data on this. But then in early 2015, when we actually launched the campaign, the money that we were raising there was equally as important for us, because at that point we didn't have much left on our accounts. So we went live with this campaign, and I hoped to raise $50,000. That was the official goal. I secretly, to be honest, hoped for a bit more, for about $200,000. But then it became $1 million campaign, and still to date, you're right. Still to date, it's the most successful Kickstarter campaign in the smart home space.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Well, yeah, it was a great deal. I remember there was a ton of excitement around there, and I think a lot of that has carried over, and a very loyal Kickstarter base, I think, that has really followed you along on the journey. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that. It did take you guys a while to get it together, but I think you did a really great job. I remember commenting numerous times on the show, followed your blog, and really the journey that you guys went through as a startup and getting into the hardware and figuring all of that out was really fascinating for me to watch as somebody who doesn't know anything about that space. It was really cool, and I think the commitment to quality really showed through that whole process. And so, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit, but again, by way of introduction, let's just make sure we set the stage appropriately for anybody listening who is not totally familiar with what the NEEO actually is. Give us the quick explanation of that.
So it's a smart home system for everyone. It's a remote that will control all the electronics in your home, being from lights to thermostats to all the AV stuff, and just making those home technology products much more accessible for people, instead of having to use many apps and many remotes, all done in one remote. That's the way we have been telling the story. There's more to that, but that's the story that we decided to go with, because that's a story everyone understands, and it's easy to buy into that. That's sort of, if you want to be nasty, you could say that's our Trojan horse to get into the homes, right? We have the brain that is sort of the processor that does all the magic, all the thinking behind the scenes, but telling the story about this brain is much more complicated. It's a smart home hub with multiple antennas, being very compatible with the rest of the world. The idea was to build a device that works with the various protocols out there, but is also compatible with the devices that people already own, like infrared-driven devices and all that, because we wanted to have its real consumer quality, so it can be adapted easily without having any installation factor, without having to wire anything. But telling the story around this brain, we found, is much too complicated and too not attractive enough, maybe not sexy enough. That's why we decided to do the whole branding around the remote, and that's why a lot of people look at us right now as a remote control company.
Very cool, very cool. And I think last we spoke, you were coming off of the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter was just wrapping up. I know that the excitement. I mean, 3 years ago when we started this podcast, the excitement around the smart home was just insane. I think you guys definitely lucked out with timing because it seemed like everybody was getting in the game. And when you were showing off what you were doing with the NEEO remote, I mean, jaws were dropping everywhere. So we sat 3 years and sat back and we watched everybody else who was doing a Kickstarter kind of disappear off the face of the earth, or you hear all these horror stories about Kickstarter campaigns, like people losing a bunch of money in it or investing something and not getting a product in return. The thing is, like, you guys are shipping now. Like there's a remote on my desk right here, no less than 2 feet away from me. This is real now. That's got to be pretty surreal looking back just 3 years. That's it.
We just had an event in Switzerland last week where we invited Swiss backers to come and pick up their unit themselves and drink a beer with us. And that was such a strange, beautiful moment, thinking about how hard it was for us for a long, long time, for every trade show we went to hand assemble the unit in the night before the show started and all those kind of things. And now there's just boxes with 1,000 units there, and we can just easily give them over the table. People take it. That was a beautiful moment for me.
Wow. Well, it's got to be great. It's got to be great to see. It's just like another baby. Like it's another. You've seen this from the beginning to now to the end here. Well, this is another beginning for you. So congratulations on that. I'm sure that you have had quite the journey in the past 2 years with setting up a manufacturing process, tooling, software design, all sorts of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about how that process started and where it is today?
I'd love to. So yeah, when we had this large Kickstarter campaign, the campaign was bigger than what we expected. We were prepared to do 500 units, and we were thinking about working with Swiss and a German contract manufacturer to make those first units. And then eventually, if volumes get bigger and bigger, then move to Asia. But with the huge volume that you have to imagine, just through Kickstarter, it was over 6,000 customers with over 6,500 units. And we realized it's now or never. Let's do it real. Let's build a manufacturing environment where we can build thousands of units every month. Because the fun thing that happened is typically after a Kickstarter, during Kickstarter, you have a huge excitement. But after the Kickstarter, all the companies we speak to that did Kickstarter campaigns, they see very little orders until they ship. That wasn't the case for us. It just continued exactly the way orders came in during Kickstarter. So we needed to get ready to make tens of thousands of units. And we decided to work with one of the largest contract manufacturers in the world and build all the test station, all the test infrastructure, the entire environment for manufacturing, building that ourselves because we wanted to have it under control. We wanted to understand it. We wanted to learn. And that was quite all right. We care a lot about quality. We could have shipped earlier if we would have compromised too much, but that was not an option at no point. So what happened is the team that actually builds the product, they ended up building it, the whole test infrastructure. That means cameras that look at the surface quality of the product during certain manufacturing steps, or other cameras with algorithm that measure some gaps between, let's say, a button and the front shell of the remote. All these little kind of things with algorithms behind it that do that job. And then the whole cloud infrastructure behind it. So with the infrastructure that we have right now allows us to sort of live monitor what's happening in China, where the current production happens. So whenever there's a certain error happening multiple times, we can react right from Switzerland where our engineers sit. And building that has been an extremely interesting journey. We learned so much, and it costed a ton more than we expected. So it costed a couple of millions more than we expected. There's a great thing with Kickstarter, because of that successful campaign and all the orders that came in afterwards, it was not too hard to raise additional money. And
that's great.
I love the fact right now that we were able to ship units to those early contributors that made all this possible, because they took a risk. As you said earlier, a lot of campaigns went nowhere or had issues, big issues with their hardware, et cetera. And those people took an early risk. Right now, we have delivered those units to them, and that's just it just feels right. Yeah,
no, I'm sure it's a great feeling, and I'll echo what Seth said and congratulate you guys on getting to this point, and wish you continued success as you move forward. Again, that manufacturing process and having followed that on your blog a little bit was fascinating to me as somebody who really knows nothing about that space. And I'm wondering if you might be able to share maybe one or two of your top, were there any really big or interesting moments or letdowns or huge surprises or hurdles that you had to get over? I'm sure it was an emotional roller coaster a little bit, and I'd love to hear maybe if there were one or two moments that you really just were totally caught off guard, and what was the lesson there? Some of the bigger lessons that you learned during that process.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking of some particular moments, and I can tell you almost every week, and still we have those crazy moments. There's always surprises popping up. There's one example could be just display manufacturing is a difficult thing. You have the cells that you actually need to build the LCD. And it's a tough market. You compete against the big players. And there's moments where you get a call from your display manufacturer where they just tell you someone just bought all the units available on the planet. And we cannot continue to build your display.
Wow.
There's things like this that happen that are a shock in the first moment, but you always find ways. It needs a lot of creativity and negotiation. Often, the first answer is we don't accept the first answer often, and that's the right thing to do. We have so many situations where we hear it's going to cost $500,000, and then it ends out just being $250,000 and things like this. So it needs a lot of energy, and there's moments where we get all these horrible messages and everything seems to go down and all these crazy scenarios. And then we in the office would sit there, drink a beer and say, hey, let's look at it tomorrow. It's going to be okay. Which is somehow we have this belief that it's going to be all right in some way. And it always does. But it just sometimes needs a beer. Yeah.
Title.
Yeah. Amen to that. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So I'm sure that feeling now of finally being able to put remotes in people's hands is hugely gratifying, and I'm sure you guys are relieved to be here. But my guess is that relief and that feeling was kind of short-lived, and now you realize you've got to very quickly even step it up another notch, and now you're in a whole nother phase where you've got units out there and you've got to support them and really get people up to speed. And how has it been initially? Talk us through some of the ups and downs of that initial process and getting remotes out there and starting to support them. How have they been received?
My investor asked me that very same question this morning. And so my answer was, hey, there's a million things that could have gone wrong and nothing major did, right? It's a hardware product. Once it's out there, you cannot send any to the hardware itself. You cannot send any updates or anything like this. So the performance of the hardware is really, really important to us. The function of the software update process, as example, is also important to us. We want to see people updating to the latest version of the software to get the benefit from all the new features and get bug fixes and all that in there. And all that works nicely. The excitement is big. People love the unboxing experience. There's many places where I see comments like better than Apple unboxing experience, things like this. If you hear that makes your day. That's so beautiful. If you know how much work went into that, how much thought went into that, then you see customers appreciating that. That's just awesome. That's incredibly nice. That being said, there's of course also sometimes feedback of, oh, this device is missing or this command doesn't work yet. And we just try to, when we were building the whole foundation of the product, to put in mechanisms so we can help customers fast if they're not having success in their setup yet. So there's a live support function in there where we can actually, let's say if an IR code to some cable box is missing, we can, even during the call with the customer, we can, for that specific customer, without doing an update, without doing any complicated manipulation, we can allow him to test certain functions. And if he confirms it works for him, then we can make it available to him immediately. And then in a second step, even to everyone. And that's the whole system that we're building is all around the community and benefiting from everyone who's part of that ecosystem. So we are not just fixing it for one guy, but for everyone among our customers. And that has been working well. Even there might have been a couple of customers saying, oh, I wish it would have done this or whatever. Typically after hours, days latest, we can bring them to success. And that's I love that part of it very, very much.
That's probably comes from your CDA roots then, right? Because that's what we do. we run into problems and we just figure out how to fix them. I mean, that's my journey as a technician and now as a programmer, running up against problems and finding very creative ways to fix them. So, congrats on all that. That's very interesting.
I certainly learned a lot from the CDI industry. I think it's the little influence that the CDO industry had on this product is so important. I'm the only CDO dude within the company, I believe. Most others come from companies like Apple or Nest or Ring company or Intel company of these profiles, and a lot of them underestimate the complexity of that smart home market or the custom installation market. And I think I benefited, and the product benefited quite a bit from my past experience in that industry.
Yeah, I can completely imagine. It's a different world. The CDA people live in, working between product and customer and managing expectations and all that. So I can definitely see how that translates into what you're doing today. So you mentioned earlier that NEEO I always thought was kind of strange here, because you're starting with a AV control remote, and you alluded to earlier that this is kind of just the beginning. Everybody else on the planet is starting off not doing AV and starting off doing like outlet switches and that kind of thing, contact sensors, lights. You guys are starting at the other end, the hard end, and doing AV and then working back from there.
Yeah, we start with the sexy part that people love.
Right.
It seems obvious to me to start there.
Well, that's kind of what I'm going to ask a little bit about here. Is there any roadmap that you can divulge that would help us understand what you mean by this is kind of just the beginning of NEEO and what you're trying to do with the brain, as you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, sure. So we have this remote, the thinking remote, that is your primary interface, especially around entertainment. It's a fantastic, very instant interface. It's the fastest way to choose music or to get to do TV shows and things like this. So it's an interface between a human and the technology behind it. And that's really where I see NEEO as a company, being the user interface. And so the brain that does the magic and talks to actually all the devices out there, that's not even used at 10% right now. So there's so much more possible there. And I think that's the first big evolvements that you're going to see with NEEO is new software versions, a lot of new features, new products, like the PlayStation 4 that we just supported, where we do full two-way control and all these kind of things. We try to have out of these user-facing features, having always exciting stuff in there. And that's how that current platform will grow. That being said, I can give you a little teaser of what's next. There is another hardware product coming from NEEO. It's going to take a while because it's a very ambitious product. But we are not going to announce it this time. We're not going to announce it until it's final, and until it's ready to ship. But it's also in that area of user interfaces.
Wow, that sounds very interesting.
You heard it here first.
I've never told someone, so you're the first ones to know, actually.
Well, we know some, we do know some things that you shared with us before the show. You remember that super secret thing that we were talking about right before the show? I did it while you were talking there, and holy cow. So if you're listening to the show, there's something very special here in the NEEO that you will not believe. Amazing. I'm just giddy as to how well that works. So, moving on. So you're shipping out to your Kickstarter backers now. What's the I guess how long till you're able to start just shipping straight out to maybe big box stores, or what are you doing for distribution? Are you selling direct, or are you going through big box stores, or are you just going to sell right online?
So right now, you're right. We fulfilled almost all the Kickstarter orders. I think by the end of this week, all of them will be fulfilled. By the end of this month, a bit over 10,000 units should be fulfilled because we had a lot of pre-orders, and then it continues like this. And we are getting large quantities right now. The speed, the throughput in production is pretty high, so we can even scale further. And so in about early December, we will have some availability of new products. And we're selling this purely through NEEO.com right now, to our direct-to-consumer and direct-to-dealer channel. We will be on Amazon as soon as we have enough inventory, but that always needs money. We need to wire millions and millions upfront to our contract manufacturer just to buy the parts, and then you have a lead time of sometimes 120 days in certain parts. So we're a small company, and managing the cash is super important. So that means right now we have some limitations in how many units we can build just from a financial perspective. We can certainly sell more right now than what we can build. And so there's other channels, big box, like we were in contact with all the big ones, and there's high interest there. But it's going to take a while until we can do that just from a volume perspective. Those tens of thousands will not be enough for big box retail.
Got it. So, one of the things we haven't really touched on is a little bit more of a ground level view of the product itself. And I think a fair amount of the people listening probably know, but I want to make sure, just in case there are people who aren't totally sure what the capability set is. I don't believe that we've really gotten into it. I mean, obviously an IR remote, you mentioned that it can control IR devices. I believe Z-Wave built in. You mentioned maybe other radios. Like, give us an overview of what really the product is capable of today, and maybe even talk a little bit about how the setup process works and what a user could expect if they're evaluating or purchasing a NEEO.
Yeah, sure. What's important for us is always, whatever we do, we look at the user experience, whether it's the setup or what protocols we support. It's all about the user. So the setup is done with a simple app. The idea is, and there will be a lot of evolvements in that, but the idea is that you can take the simple app to say, I have this, and the other device, I have an Apple TV, and this kind of TV, this kind of streaming speakers, and then you're done. There's no programming involved, no nothing. The whole user interface for the remote and for the app, which is a companion to the remote, everything's built automatically. There's no programming, no specific knowledge needed. That being said, from there, if you want to do customization, we don't lock anything down. So you can all these little automatic things. We call it recipes. So it's a sort of a macro that launches certain functions at certain times, or when you press a button, it does a couple of things and speaks to certain devices. All of that, we give you full customization. My mom would never use that, but someone in the custom installation industry that starts to use this for systems will use it for sure. And so then the protocols that we support, we don't talk very loud about the actual protocols, because what the customer really cares about is the product. So whether that's Sony PlayStation or a Nest thermostat or all these products that people love to buy, like Sonos and those kind of things, we have a Works with NEEO website where people can go and check whether we are compatible with it. Right now, it's over 70,000 devices that we already have in there. And whatever protocol that we're using, whether it's any of the RF protocol or IP, anything like this, we guide the customer in the setup through the specific steps he needs to do. Like if you add a Philips Hue light bulbs, it will, with an image, it will show you, hey, go and press that button on your Philips Hue bridge. So it's the whole setup process is very product specific. But to give you the technical details anyway of the brain, it does Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Ethernet. There's a chip in there for radios like Zigbee, 6LoWPAN, and Thread, and those standards are evolving and getting closer to each other quite a bit. So we have done our own version of it for now that supports all the important products, but there's a lot of evolvements happening there. And then there's Z-Wave. We're a fully certified Z-Wave Plus device, and of course IR. And for the customer, that should just mean whatever device he already owns, whatever he goes out shopping, it should just work. That's the vision, right? Instead of asking the customer to understand all these protocols and details, just tell him, hey, get the device that you want, that you like, and it will work with it, because we are compatible with all those languages and protocols out there.
I see, and that's something I didn't even realize. I have a Philips Hue sitting right next to me, believe it or not. And yeah, I just while you were talking, it does Hue. You guys do work with a couple of two-way devices like Philips Hue. Most of what I was searching for was all infrared, which I think a couple of people online, and mentioned a couple of people on Twitter, have kind of called out. But you guys are working on two-way devices too, and so here's a good example of this, of Philips Hue. And I noticed also that there's a pretty large developer kind of crew that's community, I guess is what it's called, that is building up around what you've opened up an SDK for this. So if you have a device or you want a particular device to work, you guys have given the ability to people to go in and just basically program these devices in. And I was looking at the thing people are working on. There's like Roku devices, Lutron, Radio Raw is in there, I think. So there's a lot of people working on a lot of different projects, and I'm curious to see how well that's going to work out, because I think that's huge. I think it's amazing. Out of the gate, you guys are able to launch with an SDK.
I think a proper SDK is something extremely powerful, and I personally totally believe in that. There's things that even if we would be growing from 40 people to 100 or 200, there's just stuff that we cannot cover, and there's a quality of having a developer community that look at code, that share code. So we said that the power of this, there's nothing like this. So we gave like all the assets that we use internally. The full thing is public available information. Everyone can use it, can write a device that does the automatic detection on the network and all these kind of things. People are also using it to integrate with custom installation system, like existing Control 4 systems and stuff like this. And seeing that happening right now, seeing the dynamic of this, I'm like, I cannot believe it. There's moments where a new product comes out and we have internal discussion about, hey, how should we integrate this? And then our community manager just says, hey, there's actually this guy from the community that already wrote a driver for it. So the same day we can try it out. This part will evolve, not like an Apple App Store or so, but a little bit of that mechanism. So developers can submit the code that they wrote to us, and if we do a code review and if we think it has the qualities to go into the main product, all these community developments will be available then for everyone without any special installation process, without knowing anything about coding. It will just look like any of the other drivers in the product. So I believe that's becoming very, very powerful. I'm very glad to have those great developers in the community.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm very excited about that part. Just myself, maybe in some time I'll be able to start tinkering with this thing and start doing some fun stuff with, like you said, other control systems or other devices that you guys aren't currently supporting, and then maybe can push that out and have other people use that software. So that's really cool.
It's also cool for guys. We have a couple of guys in the community that just got started with JavaScript, with Node.js, and we have example programs out there. You can do really simple stuff, just like writing a driver for a smart light bulb or something like this. I think it's also for guys who want to get started doing some coding. It's a great place to get started.
Right. Yeah, because you working with. We're in the CD industry, but people don't realize like how different of a mindset it is working with making machines talk to machines reliably when the machines don't talk the same language. Like it's kind of a strange subset of programming that exists out there, where devices don't exactly have, like they'll have an API documentation, but it doesn't mean that it actually is true and exactly how it's going to work on the device. So I think that. I think this is huge for you guys, because it gives the ability for people to come in and just, like you said, start learning on this stuff. And I think it's going to open the eyes of a lot more people to your product, simply because it's this open. I was actually shocked that you guys had an open, when I asked if you had an SDK and you just sent me the GitHub link to it. I was kind of shocked, because that to me, that says that the product behind it is actually mature enough to support an SDK. I've been part of a couple of different things where SDK or an API was always a request there, and that is never the first thing that you want to release to the public, because that means that what you've done with the hardware, what you've done with the software on the back end is set in stone, and you can't really change it very easily.
Internally, our developers are also using our own SDK to develop new drivers. So that also helps to that we certainly maintain everything, and we have our internal inputs, then the input from the community, and that helps the SDK itself grow as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. So Raph, I want to thank you for taking your time to come on the show tonight. We're running a little bit long on our time here, but definitely want to say thank you for coming on the show. This is the second time you've come on and sharing this story, this journey with us. It's been pretty amazing to watch, and I can't imagine how amazing it's been to be a part of it. So I guess if people want to find out more about NEEO, where would you suggest they go look?
Of course, the website is a good place, but a more special place in this is our Planet NEEO. There's a website, planet.neo.com, where the whole community meets and where I write a little blog. There's videos to watch there. There's people interacting with each other, just a group of awesome people having fun there. I think, that would be my suggestion, is Planet NEEO.
All right. Well, I will echo what Seth said, Raphael, and just thank you one last time for joining us. We wish you the best of luck moving forward, and definitely keep us posted as things develop. I know our listeners would love to hear more. So thanks again, and take care.
So cool. It's a pleasure, and I'm a fan of the show, just so you know.
All right. Thanks, Raph. We appreciate it.
Thank you.